Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Hello there.
Today we're plunging into a case study that really feels like a blueprint for how communities can, well, maybe inadvertently mortgage their future to powerful private interests.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a fascinating stack of documents here all about St. Johns County, Florida, and a really controversial decision they made back in 2024. It involves park funding.
Yeah, but it's about much more than just parks, isn't it?
Exactly. This is really a deep dive into municipal finance, political ethics, and the very real impact these things have on local communities. So let's unpack this.
Indeed. Our mission today is to really examine St. Johns County's approval of $97 million in debt for parks construction. Now, the truly fascinating and it's a concerning aspect here is the financing structure. It hinges almost entirely on future impact fees for repayment.
Right. Those fees developers pay.
Exactly. So we'll be looking at the intricate fiscal, ethical, and governance implications of this decision and how it ultimately created this significant, maybe unavoidable dependency on continued development.
Okay, so we'll explore how this debt came about, the, let's call it, inherent benefit it seemed to offer major developers,
Yeah, you could say that.
and how this one decision has essentially tied the hands of the current and future county commissioners. I mean, they're now left struggling, right?
Oh.
Trying to figure out how to pay this huge debt.
That's the core of the problem now, yes.
It feels like a compelling example of what happens when, rapid growth meets some pretty complex financial engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So for you listening, whether you track local politics or you're just curious about how communities fund their future, this deep dive, well, it offers some critical lessons, I think.
Absolutely.
So our journey starts in St. Johns County, Florida, a
Yes.
place known for just explosive growth, really.
One of the fastest growing in the U.S. for a while, yeah.
And in April 2024, the Board of County Commissioners unanimously greenlit this really ambitious parks program, over $200 million.
Big numbers.
Yeah, and not just like fixing swing sets. We're talking major new facilities, a $42 million sportsplex, a $22 million community park.
These are significant capital projects. No small change.
Definitely not. But the devil, like they say, is in the funding details.
Always is. And those details are precisely where the story gets, well, complicated. Around $97 million of this program was borrowed. Straight up debt.
Okay.
And county officials at the time, they were quick to assure the public no property tax increases. That was the headline.
Always a popular promise.
Always. Instead, they said they'd rely on existing accumulated impact fees paid by developments and a debt issuance. Basically, money already collected from developers plus this new borrowing backed by future developer fees.
On the surface, that sounds okay, maybe, but you're saying it signals a vulnerability?
A major one.
Yeah.
Because you're banking on that future development continuing at a high rate.
Right. So let's talk about those impact fees. Our sources explain them as basically one-time levies meant to help pay for the immediate infrastructure needs of new development. Roads, schools, parks.
The idea being that growth should pay for the costs it imposes. It's a standard tool.
Makes sense. But the scale here, using these fees as the main, almost the only source for nearly $100 million in debt payments.
That's the kicker.
It feels less like a funding choice and more like hardwiring a dependency. The county needs construction to keep going just to pay its bills.
It really does structure it that way. Doesn't it feel like you're mortgaging the county's future against this really optimistic, maybe even volatile bet on endless growth?
It absolutely does. And this debt approval, it didn't just happen out of the blue, did it?
Not at all. If you connect the dots, the report really uncovers this systematic and frankly quite troubling pattern of developer influence. It looks like it directly preceded, maybe even shaped this whole decision.
How so?
Well, the three incumbent commissioners who unanimously voted for this $97 million debt, they each got very, very substantial campaign contributions. We're talking between $200,000 and $264,000 each.
Wow. For local races, that's huge.
It's an extraordinary amount for county commission races, yeah.
And these weren't just, small checks from lots of people.
No. Our sources are clear. The bulk of this funding came from major developers, the ones with direct vested interests in St. Johns County growing fast.
Like who?
Big names. The Park Group, they developed Nocatee. ICI Homes, big builders in Silverleaf and Nocatee. Gate Petroleum. Hudson Company's key players in Silverleaf.
Okay, so it's not just random money. It's concentrated funding from entities who directly profit from development approvals.
Precisely. It's a very tight circle. And what kind of leverage does that kind of money create when decisions about development or debt that requires development come up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe the $200,000 question per commissioner.
Right. And beyond direct contributions, there were political action committees, taxis, supporting these same incumbents. They pulled in over $1 million in 2024, again, from these same developer sources.
$1 million.
Contrast that with the opposition candidates, people advocating for slower, maybe more managed growth. They got less than $70,000 combined.
So it's not even a contest financially.
It creates a monumental imbalance. It effectively drowns out alternative viewpoints. It makes it incredibly hard for anyone but growth-friendly candidates to even compete, let alone win.
Okay, so let me just recap this, make sure I'm getting it. You've got commissioners getting massive financial support from developers.
Yes.
Then, those same commissioners vote yes on a debt plan that basically requires more development to ever get paid back.
That's the sequence of events, yes.
It really paints a vivid picture, doesn't it? Where public policy seems to line up perfectly with the financial interest of campaign donors. It feels like policy capture.
It strongly suggests that, yes. And you mentioned the inherent benefit for developers. Establishing this debt wasn't just neutral for them, it actively incentivized the county to keep approving their projects.
Because the county needed their impact fees.
Exactly right. This leads us straight into what fiscal policy experts call the growth dependency trap.
The trap.
Yeah. By tying the payments for almost $100 million in park infrastructure to these volatile impact fees, St. Johns County basically backed itself into a corner. It needs continuous, strong development just to meet its financial obligations.
It's like building your financial house on quicksand, like you said, and just hoping the market never slows down.
That's a good analogy. Because impact fees are notoriously volatile. That's their nature.
They swing wildly with the economy.
Precisely. Unlike, say, property taxes, which are relatively stable year to year, impact fees can just plummet.
Okay.
The report actually highlights data from Florida during the 2008-2012 recession. New construction in many counties just tanked, dropped by 50, even 80% in some places.
Whoa.
And that effectively wiped out impact fee revenues for years. Counties that had borrowed heavily against those future fees, they faced severe fiscal crises. Some had to impose emergency property tax hikes / services.
No, this isn't just a theoretical risk. It's happened before, right there in Florida.
It's a documented historical vulnerability, absolutely.
So imagine the position this puts future commissioners in, including the new ones who came in after this 2024 decision.
It's a tough spot.
If development slows down, maybe a recession hits, maybe the market just cools off, maybe they even want to slow growth for planning reasons.
Many of those scenarios.
The county suddenly struggles to pay its debts. So slowing growth isn't just about community character or the environment anymore. It's a direct fiscal threat.
It becomes an existential threat to the county's budget, yeah.
So this 2024 debt deal, it basically institutionalized a bias, a pressure to keep approving more and more development, almost regardless of anything else.
It certainly appears that way and makes it much harder for commissioners, current or future, to say no, even if they think it's the right planning decision. Their hands are tied by this pre-existing debt obligation.
They're left scrambling to pay a debt incurred years ago, constrained by that decision.
And that no property tax increase line. It sounded great politically, right?
Oh.
Helped sell the debt deal.
Sure did.
But it obscures a critical fiscal reality, which is that ultimately taxpayers guarantee all municipal debt, period.
So if the impact fees don't come through?
If they dry up because of a downturn or slower growth, the burden inevitably falls back onto the county's general fund.
Which means?
Which could very well mean property tax increases down the line, or cuts to essential services, police, fire, roads, or, in really extreme cases, even default.
And the public wasn't really told about that risk up front.
The messaging focused on the upside, the no new taxes part, the lack of transparency about the potential downside, the real guarantee taxpayers were making, prevented a truly informed public debate. It leaves the community vulnerable.
Okay, so beyond the fiscal mess and this growth dependency, there are serious ethical questions here too, right? About public trust.
Oh, absolutely. They strike right at the heart of it. The financial links between the commissioners and the developers, combined with policy outcomes that so clearly benefit those donors.
It looks bad.
It suggests clear conflicts of interest. It really runs against the whole spirit of public service, doesn't it? It feels like a direct challenge to the democratic process itself.
Yeah, it really does.
And it raises fundamental questions about something called the public trust doctrine.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, it holds that public officials are trustees for the public good. They have a duty, a fiduciary duty, to prioritize their constituents' welfare above all else.
Right. Makes sense.
So when decisions appear to prioritize private interests, especially the interests of major campaign donors over the public welfare, it creates, well, at least the appearance of pay-to-play governance, if not the reality.
Paying to influence policy.
Exactly. And the report notes that Florida, unfortunately, has a history here. It's often described as ethically challenged at the local level. Often, the state ethics laws are seen as outdated, leaving local governments kind of struggling without strong oversight.
So St. Johns County isn't necessarily unique in facing these pressures?
It seems to be a clear example of a more systemic vulnerability in how local governments can be influenced, how communities are governed.
And the perception, the idea that public policy might be bought through campaign donations,
Yeah.
that just fundamentally undermines democratic representation, doesn't it?
Completely. It makes people wonder if their vote even matters or if the whole system is rigged in favor of big money.
Yeah.
When commissioners are seen as being more accountable to their funders than to their actual constituents, the entire system of democratic governance is put at risk. It feels like a breach of the social contract.
Like the public interest is taking a backseat to private deals. And that leaves a lasting scar, I imagine, on the community's trust in its leaders.
It really does. It's hard to rebuild that trust once it's damaged.
Okay, so we've really unpacked a complex and, frankly, pretty problematic situation in St. Johns County. The county's locked into this debt structure, totally reliant on volatile impact fees.
Creating this deep dependency on continued development.
A situation heavily influenced, it appears, by the developers who stood to benefit. And now, current and future commissioners are left grappling with this huge fiscal challenge.
Stuck with the consequences.
So what can actually be done? Is there a way out? You mentioned impact fees. Could reforming them be the key to tackling this debt and maybe untangling this mess?
That is the critical question now, isn't it? How does a county like St. John's get out of this growth dependency trap? And importantly, how can impact fees play a responsible role going forward instead of being the source of the problem?
Right.
The report's recommendations for fiscal reform are pretty clear, and they're nuanced. It's not just about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Impact fees do have a legitimate necessary purpose.
Which is?
Paying for the upfront infrastructure needs of new development, making sure growth actually pays for itself, or at least its direct costs.
Okay.
But using them as the primary engine for massive long-term debt, that's where the problem lies because of that volatility we talked about.
So the solution isn't just raise impact fees,
Yeah.
because that could backfire.
Right. You don't want to just blindly hike fees across the board. That could potentially stifle responsible growth or make housing even less affordable. The key is strategic reform, changing how they're applied and structured, aligning them back with their original purpose.
So less about punitive increases, more about smarter, more deliberate structuring, making them part of a bigger picture.
Exactly. Our sources point towards reforming impact fee policies to ensure they serve that intended purpose, covering actual growth costs, and integrating them into a broader, more stable financial strategy. Meaning ensuring fees are set at levels that genuinely cover the infrastructure costs tied to new development, not seeing them as just this fluctuating revenue stream you can borrow against for decades. It's about taking a truly long-term fiscal responsible view.
Okay, so what would that look like in practice?
Well, some key recommendations include establishing a debt service reserve fund.
A rainy day fund for the debt payments.
Essentially, yes. But crucially, funded from current stable revenues, not more borrowing. Enough to cover, say, 2 or 3 years of payments. That acts as a critical buffer if impact fees suddenly drop.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else? Another vital point is revenue diversification. This is huge. The principle should be no more than, say, 50% of your debt payments should ever depend on any single volatile source, like impact fees.
So spread the risk. Don't put all your eggs in the impact fee basket.
Precisely. Develop a broader, more stable mix of revenues to support those long-term obligations. That reduces the county's vulnerability to economic swings or changes in the development market.
So just to be clear, you're saying impact fees, if they're reformed and structured properly, could still play a responsible role.
Yes, they could.
But they absolutely cannot be the main engine driving huge long-term debt.
No, that's proven to be too risky. It's about making sure growth genuinely pays its way without creating these profound fiscal vulnerabilities and dependencies that end up binding future generations.
And this also requires more transparency, presumably.
Oh, definitely. Enhanced transparency in all county finances. independent fiscal oversight for major debt deals like this one, which often seems lacking, and things like mandatory public hearings for significant financial commitments. Give the community a real chance to understand and weigh in on decisions that affect them for decades.
Yeah, that seems fundamental.
And if we zoom out again, this whole situation, it's not just about St. Johns County, is it?
No, it feels bigger.
It's a powerful cautionary tale for any rapidly growing community, really, about the dangers of fiscally irresponsible debt management, about letting political considerations, especially those maybe driven by campaign money, override sound fiscal principles and sensible long-term planning.
It's a systemic problem many places face.
Yeah.
St. John's just offers some really stark lessons.
Painful lessons, potentially.
Well, what a deep dive today. We've really explored this tangled web of debt, development, and democratic accountability in St. Johns County.
Quite a web.
We saw how a $97 million park debt, sold as a way to avoid property tax hikes, actually created this deep fiscal dependency on continued growth.
A dependency heavily influenced, it seems, by significant developer contributions.
And we looked critically at how that debt got established, the inherent benefit it created for developers, and how it's effectively tied the hands of current and future commissioners. They're the ones left struggling to pay it back now.
The implications are profound, truly. This whole case just highlights the absolute critical importance of transparent governance, rigorous fiscal planning, and strong ethics in local decision-making.
Yeah.
The challenge now isn't just paying off the debt, and that's going to be a heavy lift for future commissions, but it's also about trying to reestablish public trust and ensuring that future growth actually serves the community first, funded responsibly, with diverse sources that don't just pass the buck to the next generation.
And for you listening, whether you're a resident there, a taxpayer somewhere else, or just an engaged citizen, this deep dive really shows how these seemingly straightforward funding decisions can ripple outwards for decades.
Long-term consequences.
It leaves us with a provocative thought, maybe. In your own community, how are the major projects funded? What kind of hidden dependencies or maybe ethical entanglements might those decisions be creating for the future?
It's definitely something worth keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thank